Central bank digital currencies say goodbye to your freedom. Firstly, I want to take you through this video where Rishi Sunak, who is now the Prime Minister in the UK, goes through CBDCs and what the G7, which includes Canada and the United States, is doing right now to see where this is going.
Today, I'm proud to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK. And governments and central banks across the world are working together, looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice.
So as you can see, he's all smiley and it's all about trust. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a technological advancement and innovation. But is it really just going to be another way for government to just gain power over its people? For governments to control everything? Because we know they do such a phenomenal job of controlling things like they do right now. I mean, it's so great. Look at the inflation we've got right now. Next, I want to show you this clip, which comes from a China documentary, which is about what the social credit scores are doing in China. So let's listen to what happens if you're good and on the government's good side.
And that's totally fine with Oh-Young Hao-Yu. She's 21, graduated from a good school with solid grades. She's diligent. She's nice. No surprise, she's a 752. That's her rating with Sesame Credit, a private company working with the government on the algorithms for the social credit system.
So as you can see in that video, you can clearly see how if you're on the good side of the government, life is great for you. You can go to the restaurant, you've got a great social credit score, you get discounts. You're part of like this elite membership society almost. So it's kind of great if you've got good social credit. But what happens if you do what the government doesn't want you to do? So let's take a look at what happens then.
Buy clothes or diapers, it's good. A lot of alcohol, too many video games, not so good.
So as you can see in that video, when you do what the government doesn't want you to do, things don't get so good for you. Suddenly the picture doesn't look so rosy. And the thing is, they've been talking about this a lot at the World Leaders Summit in Dubai, where Klaus himself was speaking. And they were talking about China and the social credit scoring system that they have there, how they could possibly model around that system. And isn't that kind of insane that they are looking at a communist country and saying, yeah, what they're doing, it looks pretty good. Can we do it over here? I mean, it's all about seizing the crisis, as Klaus says himself. And the thing is, when it really comes down to it, I think that is when these types of things will be implemented. Just think about it. It's not going to be just randomly on one spring day. It's going to be when there's a crisis, and then they come in and say, okay, you know what? Because of this crisis, it's going to make it much more streamlined and easier for us if we just have this central bank digital currency. And the benefit for you guys is we can give you these direct stimulus payments to help you during this terrible time. And as we know, people are weak when times are tough. During tough times, it's a perfect opportunity for them to seize the crisis and use it to push their agenda. And if they can dangle a carrot in front of people, they're going to do that. I mean, think about what happened during the pandemic. It was almost the perfect time to seize the crisis and use that to test a social credit scoring system. They did that with the ArriveCan app, and they did that with all the medicine passports that we saw as well. So they've already tested that, and people are already very acutely aware of what happened with that. So now they're backing off that, and they're probably thinking, well, maybe we can go now to the CBDC. Maybe we'll try and numb them to that realization slowly by going to a CBDC, and then we go to a cashless society, and then we come up with these social credit scores. But what we'll do is we'll do it through the private sector. So it looks like it's a new technological innovation when behind the closed doors, it's really just the government pulling all the strings. And that is exactly kind of like communism, where the government is just controlling everything. It's a weird type of communism almost, because it's certainly happening to a certain degree in Canada already, where the government is controlling all the private corporations. And when they are controlling all the private corporations, well, it's practically like they own them in some certain ways, because they have power over what they do and don't do. I mean, just look at what happened with the implementation of those medicine passports. All the private corporations, they implemented them. There were very few that actually said, no, we're not going to implement them, and stood against that. And as we've now seen with new political leaders like Danielle Smith, she's come out and she said, oh my God, these were the most discriminated people that I've ever seen. Take a listen to this.
Well, I guess the way I look at it is that the community that faced the most restrictions on their freedoms in the last year were those who made a choice not to be vaccinated. I don't think I've ever experienced a situation in my lifetime where a person was fired from their job, or not allowed to watch their kids play hockey, or not allowed to go visit a loved one in long-term care or hospital, or not allowed to go get on a plane to either go across the country to see family or even travel across the border. So they have been the most discriminated against group that I've ever witnessed in my lifetime. That's a pretty extreme level of discrimination that we have seen. I don't take away any of the discrimination that I've seen in those other groups that you mentioned, but this has been an extraordinary time in the last year in particular. And I want people to know that I find that unacceptable, that we are not going to create a segregated society on the basis of a medical choice.
And isn't that something that we can all agree on, no matter what side you're actually on? Because when you really think about what happened, those people were extremely discriminated against by the government. They were massively discriminated against. I mean, they couldn't go to restaurants. They couldn't do so many things depending on where you were in the country. And it really depended on how compliant your province was with what the government wanted. Depending on what happened. I mean, I was surprised. We saw it even here in Alberta. We saw the medicine passports. Every single province and territory across the country had them. And it's just kind of insane to imagine right now, because that was only a year ago, yet people have already forgotten. And I'm here to try and remind you of the fact that that happened, because it was no coincidence that that happened, and it was kind of ready to go almost, and it happened very, very quickly. So the thing is, we've got to realize that they are going to try and do that again. They're going to try and streamline it so people are more accepting of it the next time it comes. And that is why we have to push back against these type of things which discriminate against people. Essentially, the government just wants to control everybody. But it is our right to have our own freedom and liberty. We don't want to be controlled by the government. Now, the sad fact is, there are a lot of people in this country right now that are controlled by the government, and they don't even know it. It's kind of insane. Just think about if you're taking a paycheck from the government. That kind of puts you under the government's control to a certain degree. So really, we just have to be so mindful of these CBDCs, the cashless society agenda that is being pushed, the fact that that could lead to social credit in the future, and try and stop it before it tilts into that territory. We can use cash more. We can push back and protest when these things come around, and that's all we can really do. But if we unify, if we wake enough people up through videos like this, then I'm hoping that we can stop these things in their tracks and retain our freedom and liberty. Because as we know, social credit scores are great when you do what the government wants, but they're not so great when you don't do what the government wants. So if you enjoyed this video, maybe you'll like that one there, or maybe you'll like that one there, and I will see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.